Well, great to have you all here today. Why don't we go ahead and get started? So welcome to our 10th pivot session. We're very excited that we've been able to do this on a weekly basis. Today's session is lessons in getting stuff. We'll keep this G-rated, getting stuff done. Really, this is a session to help us think about being stuck and getting unstuck. And I'm really excited to share with you kind of my personal journey around that and some lessons from my Agile family. So look forward to doing this with you today. As you'll see, we have our little red disclaimer here that the views that I'm sharing don't necessarily reflect the views of the Brink, and it's neither an endorsement for some of the things that I'm highlighting, that they're a best solution. But this actually is a really personal talk, so I don't know that I'm going to give anybody any recommendations today, other than just sharing with you some personal anecdotes and stories that I hope can help you just think about this time and also how to move forward as an entrepreneur. So I'm very excited to be here today. I'm excited to get a chance to talk with you. Just a reminder, we do these sessions every Tuesday at 10 a.m. You are always welcome. Just please sign up in advance as you have today. We already are booking speakers for the next 2 months out, so I don't see these ending anytime soon. We've got just such a cool variety of speakers, everything from thinking about financials and implications of the CARES Act and how to take care of your taxes, into things like setting SMART goals and kind of social entrepreneurship. So lot of cool stuff coming up, so stay tuned. And please pay attention to the Brink newsletter. That's where we announce a number of these sessions. So again, my name is Lauren Feehrer. I am one of the advisors here at the Brink. I focus on customer experience, but I want to back up and just let you know, my background comes from spending about 20 years on the software side. So I was managing development teams globally and working on building software products. I pivoted myself when my company sold in 2015, and I recognized the passion that I had for making sure that products were really customer centric. And so built my own business called LoyaltyCraft around that idea of I want to help companies create meaningful products and services. So I want to share a little bit about that story and kind of help you think about, and I know as I've talked to clients at the Brink here, a number of folks have said, this is really challenging. These are challenging times. I'm struggling a bit, whether it be I'm stuck with the situation at home and the fact that I can't leave the house. I'm stuck with, trying to figure out homeschooling and my children. I'm stuck feeling confident that I am a CEO or an entrepreneur. I'm stuck trying to move my team forward when we're all kind of challenged during this time. So there's a lot of things that we're stuck around. And, I think any entrepreneur who says they've never been stuck is probably not an entrepreneur. But I wanted to at least give us the chance to really think about that. And I hope this can be interactive today. So I'm going to definitely be kind of watching the chat and would love for you to come off mute as well and join the conversation. You're more than welcome to do so. I love seeing you all on video too, so if you're comfortable, please join us that way. I don't care what your hair looks like, and now that our salons are locked down again, I guess we're going to have to deal with grays and roots for quite a while, so no worries about that. So being stuck is being trapped in something, being unable to move forward. And I thought this was a relevant topic to our current environment because of something I heard recently. So I heard someone speak about fear and courage, and she kind of unveiled to me something that I hadn't really thought about before, and I thought I'd share this concept with you to get started. She talked about shared fears that we all have, and the hierarchy of fear, of shared fear. In psychology today, you'll see this link, and just so you guys know, you're going to be getting a copy of this presentation so you can take a look at any of these links. But the shared fears that our society has as a whole are these 5. And if you think of the first one is fear of extinction. We fear death, right? We're scared that we will no longer be on this earth. The second one is fear of mutilation or fear of bodily harm, right? Fear that our organs will be damaged, fear that we'll lose a limb. The third fear is fear of autonomy, fear of being restricted or being controlled, being told we have to stay at home. Fear of separation is the fourth one, which is losing connectedness, losing the intimacy we have with other people, that closeness. And then the fifth one of shared fears, and these do go in kind of hierarchical order here. The fifth one is called ego death, but it's that sense of loss of integrity of the self, feeling humiliated or shamed, feeling unworthy. So guess what? During this current time, all of these are hitting us all the time, right? Never has there been a time, let's say, where globally especially, that all of these fears are kind of hitting us like a tidal wave, and they hit us in different phases and at different times. So there's reasons we feel stuck, and some folks become kind of hyper vigilant about, I'm going to conquer this, I'm going to kill it, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to use this time to, to propel forward, and almost to the point of kind of overdoing it. And then you also see folks who completely shut down and just want to stay under the covers. And again, I think we all have moments where either one comes into play. And so that was really the impetus for wanting to share this with you today and give you some things to think about. I'd love to hear, and I wish I could survey you, but if you want to share on chat, just anything around where you feel stuck. If you're feeling stuck with, being at home, if you're feeling stuck with feeling like, can I be an entrepreneur right now? If you're feeling stuck with, how do I connect with customers right now? If you're feeling stuck with, how do I make sure myself and my team are able to really move forward and develop a product? I'd love for you to just chat that to us, if you don't mind. And I understand that it can be a sensitive area, but we'd love to just, I kind of want to see where everyone's starting point is on this conversation. If there's anything, and by the way, I feel stuck in all those. I've always had those moments. So you're not alone if you do, but love to hear, and feel free to jump off mute if you want to comment right now, or feel free to chat about that topic.
Big one for me is, I've had a successful career in my specific field. I know I can do everything that I know how to do, but when I start trying to analyze how to take that down into supportable service offerings and creating a game plan around that and then executing from that, I get stuck in analysis paralysis, and I start doubting myself. And then all of those fears get brought to bear in some way. Extinction and mutilation, okay, health insurance, am I not going to be able to support myself? And then I start thinking about stuff that doesn't drive the mission forward, and then I just get stuck.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I completely hear you, and it's easy to lose focus on what that overall goal is when all these fears come into play too. Rachel, thanks for sharing. She was saying sometimes stuck with creativity and finding solutions for hard challenges. Yeah. And Kyle, thanks for these universal fears. Like that kind of was like eye-opening for me to just realize that we're all going through kind of this emotional roller coaster, but why? If you think of the fact that, with Corona, we're scared that, people around us are dying. We're scared that we might get sick. We're also, sometimes annoyed, but sometimes very fearful that we do have to stay at home and we can't connect with others. And then I think that the final one's a little bit more tricky, that ego death concept, but that idea of like, is what I'm doing the right thing? And am I saying the right things? And just feeling judged and feeling like, I want to be able to move forward. Can I?
And to expand on that, at least for me personally, we're at a pre-revenue stage of our company. And, I think that our product is, we thought about it, we understand the mechanics, but people are inherently unpredictable. So when we actually go to launch it in the market, we don't know what's going to happen. And that uncertainty is like compounded by, the global uncertainty with COVID and everything that's happening. So it's kind of a lot of faith that you have to have. Right.
Yeah. A lot of feelings of like, there's a lot I can't control. And so what am I going to manage? Okay. So Yeah, I hear you guys. And thanks for speaking up. Francisco also said, just afraid a new business will absorb time. Yeah, yep, it certainly can be time consuming. So I want to share with you just where my starting point was. So I mentioned to you guys that in 2015, my company sold. We at the time had 1,000 people. I was managing 400 of them, running the West region of the company. And I knew, and I was very involved in being part of that sale. But then there was this big question of, okay, now what do I do with my life? Like, I guess it's, time for me to figure this out. And, I had a lot of my own fears about, am I ready? Am I ready to, take a jump? And I did join a startup. I was the third employee at a startup that unfortunately had a big failure, which, that's a whole nother talk, another point. But after that little soap opera, it was a question of, am I ready to call myself an entrepreneur? And do I have the skills? And do I have the mindset? Am I really ready? And a lot of emotion was tied to it. And I hadn't posed this question to myself the way I probably should have at the time, but kind of looking at, how do I think of fear as information I'm getting and be conscious about it and be calm about it and actually analyze it as if it's a problem outside of yourself. It's an interesting thought, right? Now, how do you actually do it? So I did it. I did it unconsciously. So I consciously examined something unconsciously. It's an interesting thought. But anyway, what I did was this, and you can see I'm kind of a fan of sticky notes. So what I did was I took every single fear, every single doubt, every single challenge I had about starting my business, and I put every single one on an individual sticky note. There were tons, like it was a huge stack, right? And I wrote them all down. It was rough. I mean, it was kind of like a detox process because I was writing things out. Some of them were very valid and things like, I don't have my certification in customer experience, and I believe that I need that in order to, I need that credential to feel like people will believe that I have this expertise. Okay. There was another one like, I'm a horrible salesperson. I don't know how to sell. I've always had sales teams. I never had to sell. So I suck at sales. There were others like, I don't have enough experience. I mean, I was really hard on myself, right? And just put them all out there. But they're all the things that had been circulating and kind of bugging me. And so I got them out on paper. Then I did this exercise. I created 2 different spaces on my wall. One space was real stuff, was stuff that when I read it, I said, okay, that is critical feedback. This is something I need to work on if I'm going to launch my business. And then I had a whole nother category of complete crap. And it was just stuff where I was beating myself up. It was an attack on my own ego. And it's stuff that I needed to get out, right? Because it wasn't helping me propel anywhere near forward. It was just a fear. And so putting that out and just divorcing myself from it was so empowering. And I did honestly burn it up. And it felt so good. Because then it was like, it's gone. I don't need to think about that anymore. I need to stop using that as an excuse and instead just focus my time on those things that were real. And actually, when I looked at the real list, then what was really important was for me to go, okay, before I actually launch, I have to do this, 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 and this. Good. There are others here that I need to eventually do, but I don't need to do them today. And so it is important that as you get that list out, also be critical of, does it all have to be done now? Or are there things I can phase out? And so in coaching sessions, I tell folks to do this too. I've tried to facilitate it, and I will say it's deeply personal. There were definitely some tears in this process because when you really, really go deep down and you see the things that are holding you back, it's tough. But confronting that is so powerful, particularly when you're like, do I deserve that CEO title? Am I worthy of it? And you are, but you have to get through it and get there. So any comments on this, or if anyone's done anything similar? Am I alone and crazy, or any comments here?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think you're alone and crazy.
Well, thank you.
But it's interesting, and I don't know how you do it because, yeah, I think it's hard. And sometimes, yeah, well, you have to do it. And I don't think we all do it before we start a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nolita, thanks for sharing that. And and Nolita's an amazing CEO and doing a great job. She sells the best coffee in the world, so it's great to have her here. But yeah, having that confidence, and you're right that sometimes you don't do it up front, and then these things start nagging at you.
So Lauren, I have a question.
Leilani, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you determine, what was valid and constructive, and then what was trash? I mean, because this is all self-realization, right? How do you get out of your head and determine what do you need to build a plan for and what do you need to get rid of?
Yeah, I think you need to have people that know you very, very well join you for this. Once you get that wall built, have them take a look and give you that honest feedback. And I would say that you have to have your own personal board of advisors. And these are people that challenge you, but do it in an incredibly empathetic and loving way. And some of those folks are folks that I know purely in a business context. Some of them are very close friends. One of them is certainly my husband. But being able to, and I use them for this exercise, and I also use them when I was building my pitch to get feedback from them, because I knew that they'd be really honest and they'd call me out on stuff where they were like, Lauren, you know how to sell. Like, you've sold multi-million-dollar software solutions to people. Maybe you didn't have a sales title, but you were doing it. You're building the relationships and selling, and then reselling and selling again, but to have them call me out on some of the feedback where I wasn't even in my own reality, I think, and thank you, Leilani, for bringing up that question. So important is that you really shouldn't do this alone, because sometimes you don't even realize just how hard you're being on yourself. Any other questions or comments on this?
I just really appreciate the perspective of making those internalized cycles of self-doubt tangible and burnable. That's super big, and I think it takes some of not the burden, but those advisory resources around me. Sometimes when I have that internalized self-doubt, they become more counselors in a therapeutic sense than is actually conducive to forward progress. So this kind of helps. I really like making it tangible. It's a really great principle. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Just to piggyback on top of that, it's really cool how you're basically taking fear, which is a negative thing, and turning it on its head and turning it into an advantage because it becomes actionable.
Thank you. Yeah, it was one of those exercises that I kind of just said, I need to do this before I can move forward. And I didn't even realize just how powerful it would actually be once I kind of got moving. And then I realized that that I had helped myself kind of get through a lot of the things that were slowing me down. Just realizing how much it sped me up was really powerful. And I've actually gone back and done the exercise again when I've gotten stuck. So it wasn't just like, yes, when I started it, it was real big. Now it's just, I try to really acknowledge when all of a sudden I'm feeling that sense of like, oh, why am I not moving forward? And what's actually going on here? What do I not have? What am I, what's holding me back? Just getting it documented makes a big difference. So any other comments before we move on from this concept? Because I wanted to share a lot of getting unstuck concepts today, but any questions or comments on this one?
Oh, this is Petros. Thank you on the topic, especially about being stuck, because not being able to go out into the real world. Like for me, I'm trying to find now a prototyper, somebody could prototype my idea. Not being able to find somebody local makes me feel stuck, but being able to work around it. And the fear aspect is I'm operating a little bit of like that ignorance is bliss, so I don't feel fear yet, but you talking about it brings it into perspective and how to operate around fear once I get there and use it as an advantage.
Yeah, I think I had that feeling too when I began the entrepreneurial journey of like, I don't know what I don't know yet. And that's a fear of like, what if I get hit with something that I wasn't prepared for? What do I do? And so one comment, Petros, I will make is that, you know, at the Brink, we really want to be here for you as a resource and a guide to help you, you know, identify things in the community, and glad to have you on board. Just know you're not alone. And even just seeing you all and seeing those of you who are on video, you know, you're all building businesses and doing amazing things here in San Diego. So, and there's some great resources, and we hope we can serve as matchmaker and connector in that way. All right. So I wanted to share another concept with you that really impacted me. So I used to travel all around the country. I mentioned that for my software company, I was the head of the West region. The West region was everything west of Pittsburgh. So I was on an airplane quite a bit. I had clients in 18 different states, and I needed to see them often. So one day I was sitting on a flight, a crowded flight, of course, as they used to be. And this gentleman right here sat next to me. His name is Larry Sen. And Larry Sen is, his title is kind of father of culture, workplace culture. And I didn't know that at the time. I just started talking to him. I'm really extroverted. I'll talk to anybody on a plane. I'm one of those really annoying people who's just like, hi, how are you? Let's talk. So of course we started dialogue, and I learned all this great stuff about how he's coached the Fortune 500 executive teams in building their cultures. And I was asking him a zillion questions and learning so much. He really just had so much wisdom, and just a cool guy. And at the end of the flight, he turned to me and said, you know, I'm about to release my new book. Here's an early copy of it. It hasn't even been published yet, but you can have this one. I really hope it helps you in your career. And it's called The Mood Elevator. And of course, like, I had it read that night, and it changed my life. The book highlighted how we're all going up and down in terms of our mood on an elevator every day. There are things like being stuck in traffic, or you know, someone pissing us off, just, you know, things that happen that drag us down on the floors, that happen every day. And we quickly move from being impatient or frustrated to then being irritated, to getting worried at times, getting defensive, and we can get dragged down on our floors all the way down to anger and depression. And the more time we spend on those lower floors, if you will, the tougher things are, right? Versus being in those higher floors. And he doesn't call happiness the top floor. He mentions and talks in his book about that idea of being grateful, and that feeling of being so appreciative. That's really the top floor. But getting there is, you know, a lot of this, you know, humor and patience and hopefulness and resourcefulness, right? All these great things. The cool thing that I took away from this book, though, that's changed my whole outlook, because I know I had times where, you know, I'd get an email that would just bug me, you know, or one of my team members would do something that I was like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Like, oh, like, how could they, right? And those words would come up a lot. But then he mentioned the middle floor, and he said, if you can really try to focus on that middle floor, and you can see it here as curious and interested. If instead of going to that point of frustration where you're like, oh, I can't believe they did that, but instead say, I wonder what happened there. I wonder why they did that. I wonder why that guy cut me off. I wonder, maybe he didn't even see me. You know, maybe he was distracted. You know, if you start questioning even like your own thoughts, rather than being dragged down into frustration, it does a world of good. Just by getting curious and kind of asking that question of yourself. It totally changed my outlook on how I even thought of times where I was getting stuck, because my stuck for a number of years was in those, you know, I wouldn't say the real lower floors here, but I would say those floors of being anxious and irritated. But instead, you know, switching that mindset into, I wonder if I could just think about it a little bit differently, what it would do. So wanted to share that concept. And any comments on that? Questions?
I think it's great because I realize when you go, especially on the lower floors, it wastes a lot of energy. And sometimes if I get upset, especially with my husband, who's not here, so I can say that, it can waste, a couple of hours of my day just trying to kind of get calmed down and things. So I think I haven't heard this before. I think this kind of just be curious is a good suggestion.
Yeah, it's one that I really just love pushing myself to do. It's not always easy. When my husband and I get in a little disagreement, and he's not here either. I asked him if he wanted to join me for this talk today, and he's shy. But anyway, when we have a little disagreement, we don't talk to each other until we're able to sit down, hold hands, and have the conversation. So if we can't hold hands while we do it and sit next to each other and actually attack the problem as if it's across from us rather than between us, then we're not ready. And it's tough. Sometimes we say, hey, give me a little while. I'm not quite ready yet, but yeah, it's certainly challenging to to argue with someone when you're holding hands. It's a weird thing.
Well, I think that it is interesting because I hear that we should marry with our business.
Yeah. Yep. Great point, Lolita. You are married to your business. And yeah, there's times where, you got to figure out how to work with it rather than against it. And if you're working against your own business, there's something to that to really look into.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. All right. So,
and I just wanted to say, just because it's helpful for me, I think particularly in creative and entrepreneurial pursuits, you can't will yourself from the second floor of stressed out, burnt out to the 10th floor of creative and entrepreneurial. You have to go through the middle floors of curious and interested and maybe a little detached. And that's a good insight too.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that comment. Cool. All right. Well, I want to move into the big concept for today, which is around, and I'm going to kind of introduce you to my crazy world of my Agile family. And I'll first, before I even do, there they are, I want to explain why we do this and what triggered my family being an Agile family. So I have two young boys. They are now 9 and about to be 7. I realized that both my husband and I work full time. Things are hectic. There's a lot happening in our lives, but we were kind of missing some connection stuff and really sharing certain values and teaching certain things in a way that just would happen with our family that I wanted. It just felt like there was disconnection going on where, they weren't able to communicate with us. And so they're like misbehaving just to get our attention. And, some of that's natural when your kid's, 5 years old. But there were things that I realized that, if we're sitting at the dinner table and not actually having real conversations and closer to our phone than we were with our kids, that was a problem. And so that was the impetus for us to step back and say, how can we parent a little bit differently? And I came across a TED Talk by a guy named Bruce Feehrer around this concept of how to use Agile, which is a tool for software development. How do I use that in my family? And of course, I spent a bunch of time in software using Agile to make my teams very successful. And for those of you who aren't really familiar with Agile, a little background, and apologies to those of you who are very versed in Agile, but Agile was created out of this need that software practitioners had to deliver work faster with more flexibility, where we focused on building working software rather than having heavy process and documentation. And it's not that you don't have process or documentation, but that you really are focusing on getting customer input really early, responding to their change, so that you didn't spend a year building a product that nobody would use. And trust me, I did that a lot, right? I followed traditional waterfall, which meant I had business analysts writing 100-page requirements documents that they would hand off to a development team. They would build this thing based on how they interpreted the document and test it, and then hand it off to some customer who would not touch it. And I mean, I just saw that failure happen over and over and over. And that's what was happening, was that, you know, in the late 90s, a lot of software was being built that served no purpose. And so this group actually created the Agile Manifesto, which the concepts are here on the screen. But it was that concept of, how do we do this better? How do we work differently? And so Agile is really a way of working. And there's different methodologies to implement Agile. The one that my family follows, and the one I used to manage teams around, I'm certified in, is called Scrum. There's different ones. There's Kanban. There's lots of different types of Agile. But Scrum is actually the one that follows a very distinct pattern. And you can see that here on the screen, where you start with a backlog of all the items you need to get done. You plan what you want to do in a sprint. And a sprint is a set time. So it might be anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Most teams are doing 2 to 3. The team are all equal. And the team is not, it's servant leadership at its best, meaning that the Scrum Master is not managing the work. The team manages their own work and takes ownership of it, but the Scrum Master facilitates the process and keeps all the outsiders away from the team. They do their very best to eliminate roadblocks. There is a product owner, and that's the person who's kind of responsible for answering any questions about what the product should be all about. So those are the 3 roles. It's very, very simple. And so when you follow that Scrum process, you have a full backlog, but you take the items off of it, put them in your sprint backlog, and they're the things you're going to do for that next, let's say, 3 weeks. That's what we do in our family. So for those 3 weeks, you're only working on the items that you took from the backlog and said, this is what my priority is. This is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to get these done. So that at the end of that period, your work is finished on those items. So the things that are on the sticky notes, or those items, really need to be able to be accomplished in that time period. They need to be broken down at a certain size that allows them to get done. And you learn that over time, and you actually get better at this process over time, because your team is learning how much work can they take on in a given sprint. So this is just in general, that's how Scrum works when you're building software. It delivers tremendous value once you get it working well, but it's very, very different because the team is really able to be creative. They're getting feedback from the customer when they demonstrate that finished work. And that finished work may be shippable product, or it may be just kind of adding up into a product that's ready to launch at a later date. But the whole point is that, you know, during that period, they're really focused on the things that they can do. If something doesn't get done, it goes back to the backlog. And then once again, the team and product owner decide what's going into the next sprint. So I'll stop there, because I know I just like brain dumped what is Scrum in like 2 minutes. Any questions on just what Scrum is? I'll talk for a moment on how my family actually uses it. But any questions or comments? And anyone out there using Scrum right now with their team?
I don't know if I'm using Scrum, but I'm using some form of Agile. I think
Okay.
It's just by default, because I'm not a process type tool, person. I just like to get in and get it done.
Yep.
And we're bringing a software product to the market, and we're working actually with our first customer to build our first wireframes and GUI interface. So,
Okay.
I guess, we're doing the interaction stuff, but we're just having small sprints with them.
Yep.
Weekly sprints to see, this is what you have said, we're coming back with like your user interface. This is what you want.
Great.
And working. I guess that's somewhat. But.
Yeah, you're kind of sounding like Kanban, but
okay,
yeah.
that sounds good.
Who knows? But the important thing is you're highlighting the iteration and the interaction with the customer, that you're getting that feedback and you're doing it at high frequency, which, from a customer experience junkie here, I'm like, yes, you're doing the right things, Tracy. Good work.
Well, my husband's for Salesforce, so I know all about this from his interactions with them.
Sure.
All about that user interface.
Great. Yeah. So I wanted to share, both a little bit of like Agile is interesting. Scrum is great. I did this out of necessity with software teams because I was seeing all the challenges with trying to build from a requirements document. I actually really loved the change my team felt in how interactive it was, because they'd get feedback on what they were building real time, you know, I mean, as close to real time as possible. You know, they'd build something and then within the week, it was like they heard whether or not it was what the customer really wanted or not. And so it was super powerful. They were coming up with ideas that, you know, because they were, you know, they were so close to that customer, they were coming up with better ideas than, you know, what would have been designed in a business analyst's, you know, head. So it was huge. So I started working with it before it was formally called Agile. It was just iterative software, and I think it made a big difference. So like I said, my background was in managing teams that, and I shouldn't even say managing. So I served as a Scrum Master. I taught and coached product owners, and particularly because I was working with teams that were in Hyderabad, India, and then with customers here in the US, we had to figure out how do you make sure that product owner is represented in India so that we could develop software faster. So that was something I particularly spent a lot of time working on, was Agile coaching in that. And also I started applying Agile into outside of software into other realms of business. Applying it to my family though was an interesting proposition. You know, like I said, the problems were my family wasn't able to give each other feedback effectively. We weren't accomplishing things as a family that we wanted to. We weren't really planning. It was just, you know, whoever kind of maybe screamed the loudest about what they wanted, got it. So we wanted to change all that. And so, and by the way, the link to that TED Talk is down there, and you can always look it up. There's Bruce Feiler's name. It's called Agile Programming for Your Family. So I used his model and basically said, all right, once my kids are old enough to write somewhat legibly, we're going to do this. And what they need to be able to do is say, as, you know, as a family member, I want to do blank so that I'm like whatever, so that I can accomplish whatever it is I want. So this is our board behind us, by the way. So we are color coded. Each one of us gets our own color. If you're doing this in software, you may want to color code by different product areas, but we color code by person for our family. And so I'll give you guys a couple examples. So here's the difference of my kids, right? Here's this one. This is, we got a puppy, and one of my kids wants to teach Ranger how to fist pump. That's his. Okay, so that he has a dog that can fist pump with him. So that's on his to do in the sprint backlog for this sprint. The other one is, I want to get to play, this is Lucas, I want to get to play a baseball game as a family. That's his. My husband's, he's blue, he said he wants to organize and clean the garage. So these are all three things we're going to do over the next 3 weeks, right? And we move them from to do to in progress to done over the course of that 3-week period. So we have all the stories, and our stories are all in our very first family backlog. We pull the stories that we want to concentrate on for the next 3 weeks. We pull them into our sprint backlog, and then we do them. And every couple of days we meet and we move them. By the way, it's really cool because the kids take ownership and they say, all right, once I'm going to start this, I'm going to move it from to do to in progress. So once he starts trying to teach the dog to fist pump, he'll move it to in progress. Once the dog accomplishes that, and we'll see, hopefully he can do it in 3 weeks, we move it to done. If it doesn't get done, it goes back to the family backlog and we'll plan it for another time. But what's really cool is now I've got, you know, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old who take ownership of their tasks. They have accountability to do these things, and they're also able to speak up and have a voice, because as a family, we decided we are going to play that baseball game. And so it shifts the dynamic of them calling out, this is what I want to do, versus it being just us saying, all right, this is what we're going to do as a family. Now, and in a family, the dynamic, sometimes we take turns being product owner, but the kids get to be product owner. So it's a pretty cool thing. By the way, like I said, you can't add to the sprint when it's in progress. So you can't change the scope. The scope is agreed to, and we commit to that scope. And then we do that for the 3 weeks, and nothing else can come into play. And the Scrum Master actually has to keep anything else away from it. It's, we're going to do what we put up here and committed to. Now, if things don't get done, then it's a matter of kind of putting them back into the family backlog. But we do our very best. We commit to each other that we're going to do our best to try to get through it. And it works exactly the same building software as it does with our family. I'm going to stop because I know this is all really weird. Any comments or questions?
Just a question.
Yeah, Kyle.
So it seems like you're kind of using a Kanban format to do a sprint exercise. And you have like a series of stories that enter into the sprint, and the sprint's a set time. But what about the fact that, you know, if you have 4 stories, you know, they could be different, like levels of difficulty. So one takes a day, 4 weeks, you know, so how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're learning a lot about that. Some stories that, like, I can tell you there's a story in the family backlog from my son, Lucas. He's the 9-year-old, and he has start a business as one. Start a business. And I'm like, oh God, like that's too big. That's too big of a user story. You have to break that down into a lot of tasks. You can't start a business and you know, do that all in 3 weeks. I mean, maybe just agree to start a business, but you know, this is a huge project. So that's a lot different than, you know, an hour-long baseball game. The way in Scrum you would do that is you t-shirt size, and I haven't started introducing t-shirt sizing to my kids yet, but you would actually size things as small, medium, large, extra large, and then your team works on figuring out, you know, what does extra large look like, and it's comparative. You never are putting in an agile, you're never putting in the exact time it's going to take, because it's all relative, and you have to figure it out and build cadence as a team. You know, a lot of people use story points in the same way I just described t-shirt sizing. But yeah, there's a whole, and that could be a whole nother talk of, you know, how do you do agile estimating in an effective way? What we found, and you're right, I appreciate that point, Kyle, that we kind of mixed Kanban and Scrum here, because a lot of these really vary in terms of just the size, and it's teaching the kids too, like, what are you able to accomplish in a set time period, and how much do you need to break that down, so they learn how to break up their big projects into smaller tasks. Kyle, does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, but yeah, great point. Other questions from the group?
I'm kind of just dumbfounded. I never thought to apply Scrum Agile to my personal life as a software IT techie guy. This seems kind of like, why didn't? So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's transformative. By the way, Agile has been used in a lot of interesting scenarios. So this is the Scrum board for when Delta Airline had a merger. That's what theirs look like. Just so you see, they can be used for a lot of complex stuff. I think this is a pretty fascinating example of how a really big organization planned out a very complex activity. And generally, you know, you're using Agile to guide, kind of like Kyle was alluding to, when you're all building one product and one vision together. It's a bit different than, you know, a family that's got many different projects and different visions. But I think you can still apply some of the fundamentals. So a couple, it's one thing for you to learn how the process is applied, but it's another thing to actually take these two concepts into application. And this is why I knew Scrum was important for my family. In Scrum, the team openly talks about these values, and they hold each other accountable to these values. And so that's why I say it's a way of working. It's not like some people say, oh, it's a methodology. And, you know, I would say, well, hold up, like it's actually a huge shift in the culture and the way in which people work together. The way that when I start an Agile team, we have very open conversations about the Scrum values, which you can see described here. So courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. And those are all lovely words. They're very meaningful, but they have different meanings for each individual. And so what the team does, and the exercise that I recommend that teams do, and actually my family has done, is to define the words. as a team. So, you know, get everybody on a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, use a tool like Mural or Miro, and come up with what's your team's definition of the word courage. What does courage mean to us? And then what won't we stand for? What are we going to call out on each other and say, you know, that wasn't courageous, and we want to make sure we stand by these. And the cool part about that concept of team in Agile is that the team becomes, they really trust each other. If they're going to build software effectively together, do anything together, they hold each other up on these things. And so having these joint definitions and also making sure that they're clear on what they won't tolerate is a really big deal. So commitment in our family was a big one, that, hey, like, we're going to commit to doing our best at actually doing these. And when, as parents, we've slipped, our kids know that they're allowed to, and certainly, you know, it's all about openness. So they call us out on it and say, you know, Mom, you're completing your stories, but some of the stories we have as a family, you're not actually committing to. You get too busy and you don't do those things. And it's sometimes hard to hear that feedback, but it's so important that now they actually have guidelines as a family. Like, these happen to be our family values as well. So that's kind of the power. But as a team, just being able to mutually agree on, you know, what it is you believe in. And maybe you don't love these particular words. You may not want to do these Scrum values. You may have your own value that you want to define as a team. But I think it's a really worthwhile exercise. Any comments or questions on that?
Actually, just a quick question. You mentioned Mural, another one. What's preferred, or is there a preferred free whiteboard app? Or
free is the tricky word. I will say that Mural has, I think, a 90-day free trial. So it's fairly inexpensive. Mural is the one that I like because I'm able to do, there's so many different templates that they have, and you can even create your own template. So I really love Mural for that reason. I just love the ability to create and to work with teams. So that's the one I've been using the most extensively. Miro has a very similar feature set. There are a lot of Agile tools out there too, in terms of backlog management, and you know, Jira is the one, J-I-R-A, is the one that everyone knows in kind of the software world, but there are other ones like Monday or Asana, or I think it's called Write. I mean, there's a bunch of different ones out there to actually help you manage a backlog. But yeah, to answer the whiteboard question, I don't know. I mean, I think it just depends on how complex you feel like making it. Mural has a lot of power beyond just using it for whiteboarding.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll think about that. If I come up with any, I'll make sure we share them. In terms of anyone else have any free whiteboard tools they're using? I'm going to ask the audience. All right. Well, we'll continue to take that one as a question and see what we can find. Where I want to go next is actually this concept too, which is Scrum Ceremonies. So this is the other benefit. And I mentioned to you, like, that my son called us out on us not committing to his stories. Doing these are meetings, but they're different types of meetings you do for different purposes. And so, you know, every day we're coming to the board and we're moving tasks along, and we're making sure we're making progress. So that's the daily Scrum. And as a family, I can't say we do this every day. But at least every 3 days we're doing it. Also, when we're moving things from the family backlog into our sprint, that's sprint planning. When we're done with the sprint at the end of 3 weeks, we review that. We review what we've completed, and it gives us a chance to celebrate as a family and say, oh my gosh, like, look what we did. We did a window art project. We made omelets with chocolate. Our 6-year-old can type 20 words a minute. That was one of his. And the boys wanted to get stronger and run faster as a family. Also, we play Scrabble, but we play as a team together. So 2 of us play and we try to beat a score of 500 combined. So we did that. So we look at that and we celebrate, like, oh my gosh, look what we did. This is amazing. And as a family, like, we didn't build a software product, but but you are, I mean, you're using that meeting to demo your working software, to also kind of get that feedback, and celebrate what you've accomplished. So that's important. And then the next one is done with just the team. So our family has a sprint retrospective. We ask each other, and we take turns, and we go around and say, what went well this sprint, what didn't go well, and what are we going to do going forward? What are we going to try to incorporate into our next sprint? And it's a really great, honest conversation. And to have children who can voice the things that they like and don't, in the context of this, is really cool. And that's been the biggest change for our family, was just getting them on board with, like, saying, like, as a family, this is what we value, and what didn't go well was, maybe that mom's on her cell phone too much. It allows for some really honest conversations, but also, I think just teaches everybody to be able to speak up, and that they all have an equal voice. So, and that's what's powerful in the software team as well. I'll stop there because I know that's a huge idea. Any comments or questions on this one?
I like the idea of you having a physical space and the Post-it notes and your Scrum board there, where you can visualize all of the things that you have to do, what are in progress, and as you make progress and things get done. Because I think a lot of times we have internal goals, but when they're not top of mind or things in front of you that you can visualize, sometimes you forget about it or deprioritize it because they're not visible. So I think that's important.
Exactly. Leilani, thank you for bringing up that point. And it ties very much back into being stuck, and that idea of, well, how do I get unstuck with the whirlwind of thoughts going on and the lack of focus I have? I would, suggest that you try this. Try it just for, and it's hard. The first time you do it, it's not going to feel completely normal. It's going to be a little awkward. So give yourself some grace with it, and maybe try it a couple times. But look at when you actually document things, and maybe your colors are your different work streams of things you need to do. But really highlighting it, like, this is what I need to get done in my business. Let me push these things through. And the fact that, like, I mean, this is a wall in your office, you can't avoid it. It's right in front of you, and that makes a big difference to me. More so, I mean, some of you, you're completely digital, cool. There's tools out there that can help you. I know for me, I still go back to these physical sticky notes, because there's nothing as cool as being able to make a sticky note to the done category. So, other comments or questions? So for those of you who are a bit more unfamiliar with Agile and you want to do some learning on this, the .orgs of Agile Alliance and scrumguides.org, they're great at giving you some solid overviews. If you need additional kind of Agile or Scrum help, I'm always happy to talk to you about that, or point you in the direction of some resources. My family has been recorded doing one of our Scrum meetings on YouTube, and I have a blog on my website about it. And there's that link to that TED Talk. But we have about 4 minutes left. I want to share with you kind of my final thought around being stuck, and it's about the power of mindset. And I know when I talked about being curious and that idea of the mood elevator, that's partly mindset as well. But something that I think was shared earlier was just how entrepreneurship can be really challenging, in that there's a lot of things that distract from our focus, things we can't control. I think entrepreneurship's been glamorized a lot, and that idea of like failure has been so romanticized. And yes, in Agile, you expose failure very quickly and you recover quickly from failure. But failure sucks. It's no fun. It's no picnic. And so I think, we do need to take stock in that, entrepreneurship can include a lot of really big bumps, but that doesn't define us. And that's kind of the point I want to make there. Entrepreneurship can certainly be lonely, but I want you to know you're not alone. And like you can see on and this meeting and at the Brink, you know, there's a lot of people doing interesting things in San Diego, and hopefully we're really building out that community with the ecosystem we have. On the other side of your screen, you happen to see a guy who's like leaning down. He's actually in, I think that was about mile 60 of a 100-mile run. So my husband's he's an endurance athlete. He's an ultra marathoner. So he runs 100-mile distance races that take between 25 to 30 hours for kind of the average ultra runner to complete. The ones he does are at elevation. So this happened to be in Leadville, Colorado, where the race goes between 9,000 to 13,000 feet. I see you, Tracy, shaking your head. Yeah, he's nuttier than me. I mean, you guys already know we're an Agile family and we're nuts, but he's like, yeah, completely crazy. The race goes all night long. When you do, and he does triathlons and Ironman too, but ultra running is a whole different category because you start usually early one morning and then you run all night long into the next day before you finish. And certainly mindset when you're doing a race of that caliber is so important. I can just share with you, because I paced him. Once you kind of hit 50 or 60 miles, they allow you to add a pacer so that, because usually you're starting to fall asleep at that point and making bad decisions. So you need to have someone accompany you. So I paced my husband on these lovely races in the mountains. And I can tell you that the idea of forward progress is what propels us forward. So it's that idea of just take another step, just keep going. Don't give up. And by the way, that picture on the bottom part, that's the race profile that he completed for that particular race. So you go up Hope Pass and down it, and then you have to turn around and go do it again. So it's pretty insane. But why does someone take this on? I think it's to prove to themselves, and just like taking on entrepreneurship, it's to prove yourself you can, and to test yourself and know that there's huge risk of failure. It's like entrepreneurship, but there's tremendous power in the challenge of it and overcoming your own. And I will say that physically trained as you are, it's what's in your mind and the things you tell yourself that make all the difference. I know that when he used to beat himself up during these races, those are the times that it was most trying, versus surrounding yourself with a community that lifts you up. And so that's what's actually really interesting about the ultra running community, is that we don't ask what's the worst that could happen, we ask what's the best that could happen. And I think that's a great question as an entrepreneur to ask as well, rather than look at it as what's the worst that might happen to me, what's the very best that could happen in this journey. Thank you for spending the time with me today. I have time to stick around for a couple minutes if anyone has any questions or comments and wants to stay on, but thank you for spending the time. And I know, entrepreneurship, like I said, is a personal journey. We're very excited to be able to support you in that any way we can. So please stay in touch. You can always, reach me through the Brink. That's Lauren@LoyaltyCraft.com is my email address. I'm happy to stay in touch. So thank you very much. Questions, comments?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. I'll take a look at the chat. I know, Eddie, you were asking me about a book for, you guys were busy on the chat. Ooh, thank you. I hadn't been looking. Your question about that fears exercise I did about the walls and kind of recognizing your fears, I have not found a book that covers it. I know I've done it personally, but it's one I definitely know some great speakers, and I think some books that hit it in some ways, but I found the ones that I appreciate the most are the ones around habit formation, and like Atomic Habits by James Clear is the one that I've read most recently. That's got me very excited about that concept.
Looking at the schedule for the Brink, unrelated to the material here, you mentioned that Tuesdays there's weekly, etc. I didn't see on my schedule. I saw today's, but I'm not showing up anything in search for subsequent weeks.
Yep, we are working on finalizing the schedule for upcoming weeks. They will always be every Tuesday. There will be one. So pay attention to the Brink newsletter as we'll announce the speaker for next week. So it hasn't been announced yet. Okay. But yeah, we've got some really cool ones coming, and you know, show up for the ones that make sense for you and your business. We've got such a cool variety, everything from finance to, there's going to be one on marketing budget and, you know, making decisions around your marketing campaign. Smart decisions, and also decisions around what marketing tools should I use, what CRM should I use. That's going to be coming up soon in August. There's going to be another one on inclusivity. And if you've got suggestions or know a great speaker who you think would be helpful, please reach out to me.
Very cool. I'll look forward to it. Keep my eyes out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for checking though. Yeah. So just stay tuned. But yeah, every Tuesday at 10 we're doing these, and they're all on YouTube too. So I don't know if we posted the link, but they're all they're all recorded, and yeah, now we're up to 10 of them. So if you find one that's helpful, that's great. We'd love to have you watch it. Yeah, and Eddie, the book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Another question was around, can you do Agile in a service business? Yes, absolutely. You can do any kind of, to me, like Agile has no boundaries in terms of what kind of work, you know, that you're breaking down. You just have to be able to break it down into clear user stories. And user stories function as requirements, but they're in the perspective of who that customer is.
And what's the name of that one?
I'm sorry?
You said it. Yeah, what's the name of the book? What's the name of the book?
Oh,
you
so
you have to break down the stories.
Oh, no. That's part of Agile, is breaking down user stories. And I would say if you go to scrum.org, there's a great overview of Agile there. And just to learn about it more, I'd start with the Scrum Primer. And Cassandra, is that you asking that question?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up with you too, to just point you in the direction of where to find good kind of simple descriptions of how to use this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, this will be on YouTube within the next 48 hours. Other questions?
Nope, just a lot of gratitude. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. It was great to see you all today. Thanks for spending the time together, and look forward to staying in touch.
See you soon.
Eddie, you said, I just found out about Notion, free for one person. Yeah, Notion's cool. There's another product, and I know that they're in San Diego, and I have to think of the name. Benton, are you still on? Benton, are you there? I think you must have dropped. Yeah, there's a San Diego company that just built a project management tool that's actually totally free. I have to find it. Let me see. Give me 1 second. It's I haven't played with it yet, but it seems very interesting. And they just got a lot of, Click Up. That's it, Click Up. And yeah, they just got some significant funding. So it's pretty exciting to see. When I say significant, they got $35 million in their Series A.
Right.
Yeah, so nice to see a San Diego-based project management tool that, you know, their user subscription it's a free model, and they're doing cool stuff. Let's Click Up.
And what's the name?
Click Up.
Click Up?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, yes, please unify everything. I'm done with 20 different tools for it. Glad I hung around. Thank you. This is invaluable stuff.
Thank you,
even
Timmy.
if just for the emotional support. So. Cheers.
Yes.
Yeah, with all the hearing that our school systems are shut down, I can tell you, oh my gosh. So yeah, I appreciate everybody here too.
I'm so glad. My 17-year-old just graduated high school, so I'm glad I don't have to go through that.
Oh, congratulations, Cassandra. That's exciting.
It was, but I'm no dorm life. I can't get them out the house.
Oh, I hear ya. Cool.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all as well. Have a great day ahead and stay in touch.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Sure, everybody. All right. Bye.